What's up, guys? This is the Organic Guy, and welcome to Organic Adventures, where we are all about starting, engaging, and documenting conversations that will hopefully help you understand and experience what organic is all about. And today we have a very special guest on the show. But before that, I'm going to like to give a quick shout out to our friends at Think Organic Kenya, who proud themselves as being the home of organic products. So they are basically trying to make it easier for you and me to live an organic lifestyle, really conveniently, and trying to make them easily available to each and every single one of us. So all you have to do is just visit their website, thinkorganic.co.ke. Also, or download their app from Android or Apple Store for you to be able to enjoy your shopping. So today we are very privileged to have with us Maina of Kenya Biodiversity Coalition, who are really working very hard to make sure that they conserve every single bit of biodiversity that we have in the country. So today we're going to talk all things about biodiversity, and we'll try and delve a little bit about the very controversial topics of GMO, trying to understand what it is and what is the current situation in the country. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado,
Alright, guys, welcome back to Organic Adventures, and as I promised you guys, we are one-on-one with Maina, who is the coordinator for Kenya Biodiversity Network. So it's a pleasure having you, and thank you very much for creating time for us.
Thank you.
So before we even go further, I think it's fair you have an introduction of what you do and what you're all about.
Thank you, Brian. I'm happy to be on the program.
Pleasure.
My name, as you've heard, is Maina, and I'm the national coordinator of the Kenya Biodiversity Coalition,
yes,
which is a coalition of over 60 member organizations all over Kenya.
Okay.
We have membership broadly from faith-based organizations, consumer-based organizations, NGOs, CBOs, and even animal welfare networks, all of them committed to issues related to biodiversity conservation and promotion of organic, or what you call agroecology.
Yes.
We have been in existence from as far back as 2007, working on these issues.
Wow.
Campaigning on biodiversity conservation,
yes,
protection of our natural resources.
Yeah.
And in the recent past, not really recent, but we've also been quite key and loud on issues of biotechnology, and especially modern technology,
yes,
modern biotechnology,
yeah,
which includes genetically modified organisms. As an organization, our stand is clear. We say no to GMO,
yeah,
because we have key issues related to the socioeconomic concerns,
yeah,
farmers' rights, access to seed.
okay,
Because for us, our biggest concern is who will control the seed market. Because if you look at genetically modified organisms, they are not products that naturally occur in nature.
yes,
Naturally, you find male and female come together and procure.
Yeah.
But with the GMO, that happens in the laboratory.
yeah,
And it's reached a point where the kind of laboratory process, be using the gun to do the genetic modification,
yes,
the splitting the genes, is not very
precise.
It's not very precise,
Yes.
and there are key challenges that have come up because some of the scientists have raised concerns about a lot of the genetic disorders that have come up in the recent past, being because it can never be really precise.
Yeah.
And right now we are going to where scientists are going a level higher,
Yeah.
to what they're calling gene editing, synthetic biology,
Yes.
which is not even defined under modern biotechnology,
Yes.
GMOs.
Yeah.
It is not even included in the definition, even in Kenya, even in the Convention on Biological Diversity.
Yeah.
And so there's a move towards trying to bring this on board because they're even more complicated.
Yeah.
If you look over 20 years,
Yeah.
maybe 25 years, countries like the US have been told that have been growing GMOs and no one has died.
Yes.
But you find genetic modification there is mostly on maize,
Yeah.
which they call corn, maybe
Soya.
on cotton, on soya. These are not products that are consumed on a daily basis by people.
Yeah.
Most of them are products that are consumed by animals, the cows, and feed for animals and domestic animals. And so they are not, the impact is not directly. If you look at maize, for example, in Kenya, we consume it as ugali, as uji, as mahindi choma, and that is a direct product that we eat. In terms of legislation in Kenya, there's still that ban on GMOs that came into force in 2012. The Kenya Biodiversity Coalition was very instrumental in that, and we are happy that the cabinet made that decision and have remained steadfast on that, because until we reach a point where Kenyan scientists are able to do their own scientific analysis or even their own procedures in Kenya, it is not fair that we become people that are going to be used as experiments to test on some of these products. The multinationals that are pushing the genetically modified products are mostly into it because of accessing the market for the seed. Once you access the market for the seed, you control the food, you control the whole value chain, and that is a very dangerous. And you can see now, especially in Kenya, with the rising challenges with non-communicable diseases like diabetes, cancer, diabetes, hypertension, a lot of it is related to our food, because we've reduced our food. Even when the government speaks about food security, it's just about maize. Yet there is need to diversify and go back to a lot of our traditional crops to ensure that we have proper nutrition and avoid the move towards a lot of the fast foods, which the younger generation think is the in thing to eat chips or fries every day, and that is a key concern for us.
So I think it's very fair. You've given us a really good overview of what you guys are all about in terms of the Kenya Biodiversity Coalition and what you stand for. I think now we know what you're all about. So before we go deep into these issues, why can't we just define for someone who doesn't yet know what is biodiversity?
Biodiversity is, can I say, what you actually see in a truly natural environment. In existence, biodiversity is, for example, if you go to a forest, let's say Mount Kenya forest, and there has not been much interference, and so there's a variety of all kinds of plants, what you may say call weeds, herbs, and all this. And the importance of biodiversity is that natural environment where all these things are in existence, even the animals and even the plants, the insects, they're able to sustain themselves. For example, if you go to a forest, Mount Kenya forest, if you go to the Amazon, these are places where they coexist and are able to replicate. Even if a tree falls down, they're able to, others have the pores are there, they can grow. When the trees are growing, they're attracting the rainfall. It is a natural cycle. When you go to an area where there's no much biodiversity is where you find like monocultures. Let's say, for example, in the West, where you have huge plantations of maize. Or if you go into Narok and you have a huge plantation of maize or wheat, that system is not biodiverse. When you have that monoculture, you have many challenges, for example, of weeds, insects that are able to attack that particular crop, if it's wheat, if it's maize. Because when you have a biodiverse environment, let's say in your backyard, you keep it as natural as possible. So you grow all kinds of products, sukuma wiki, spinach, onions, pilipili. That environment is a push and pull for different factors. For example, if the aphids or the insects want to attack the vegetables, the onions and the pepper are able to repel them. And that's why we promote a lot of this biodiversity conservation. In everywhere, be it the forest environment, the marine environment, everywhere that we go, keeping it as natural as possible. If you look at, for example, our oceans now, there's a big challenge with the pollution with plastics. Whales are dying, and when the scientists do dissection, or the stomach bursts, it's full of plastics. That's not natural, and that's why a lot of questions are being raised about even our marine environment and the pollution being caused by a lot of the plastic products. Yes, in Kenya we have banned our plastic paper bags, but the plastic bottles and all this are still a big threat. And it's important that we move towards more ways to conserve and sustain our environment.
Yeah. So it's very important you've mentioned about now biodiversity, because the other day we also saw FAO, they released a report on biodiversity, the situation of biodiversity in the world, and it was very important to note that there is over 6,000 different kind of species that we can consume, but currently we are utilizing well under 200 species of them that we are consuming. So we are way under in terms of the diversity of food that we are consuming as humans. So going with that report, and they're saying that we are putting much pressure, a lot of the biodiversity is under threat. So why is it important that we should really be keen on conserving biodiversity?
Because at the end of the day, the diverse environment that we live in, they all contribute to our well-being, be it even looking, for example, for medicine. You find that a lot of the manufacturing companies that are manufacturing medicine are able to extract the products from various species all over the world. If you look, for example, the Prunus africana, the tree, the scientists have not been able to extract the active ingredient in it. And when you speak to a lot of the people who have experience, they say that Prunus africana is a good herb. The bark, when you boil it, and the roots is good in terms of protecting men, especially against prostate cancer. The interesting bit, the scientists have not been able to extract it and put it in a tablet. So a lot of it is you boil the bark or the roots, then you drink. Even when you go to a lot of the traditional communities, like if you visit men who are the so-called council of elders, and they see Prunus africana, many will know this is good for us. And when they do the soup, they boil the soup after, when they're doing ceremonies, they put a bark or the leaves of Prunus africana, and it's good. So you can imagine, a lot of this, over 6,000 species, we could have a cure for cancer there.
Definitely.
So we need to conserve them and protect them. For example, even in Kenya, some years back there was a scandal about an enzyme that was collected from Lake Bogoria. And this active enzyme, the active ingredient, is what is used to manufacture stonewash jeans. And the company that was able to, let me say, pirate or biopiracy, picked that, went with it to Europe, and have been producing stonewash jeans. The communities have never benefited from that. And if you look at the Kenyan population now, we have a big number of people who are doing science, and they can do that. So we also call on the government to actively support science and research. We are not anti-science, anti-research, but we want local researchers to be supported. Because imagine if a Kenyan scientist had discovered that and we could produce the stonewash jeans as Kenya. Wouldn't be able to earn so much money. Of course, that company is big. The budget is like several times Kenyan's budget in a year. So we could have made a lot of money out of that. But sometimes we are not very patriotic as Kenyans. So it's important, because these people are allowed access by
the government.
Yeah,
it's also important you've mentioned about that, because I noticed most of the eco-friendly and biodiversity networks are NGOs and private companies. So the government hasn't really hold a grip on trying to protect its biodiversity. Yes, we have government organizations that do promote it, but can you say that the government is really putting a lot of effort in terms of protecting its biodiversity?
Yeah, I think they are trying now. I know for a fact now we're in the process of developing a national biodiversity strategy. It's still in draft form. I think this year it should be ready. That's a big step forward. There was another one before, but not much had been done. But I see now, even with a lot of the bureaucrats within the government agencies, there's a lot of move towards protecting our diversity. Of course, we must appreciate the work that the civil society are doing, the NGOs, because we've worked very well together. Even in as KBIOC, we have contributed to that national biodiversity strategy that is being developed. And so the move towards is good, but we need much more effort.
More can be done.
Yes.
So one thing that suddenly is not contributing to biodiversity is GMO. So when we talk about it, before we even go deep into GMO, I guess there's someone out there who doesn't know what is GMO. So can you sort of give them a light? What
GMO stands for genetically modified organism.
Yes.
In Kiswahili, in Tanzania, they call it viinitete.
Oh, say that again.
Viinitete.
Viinitete.
Yes.
All right.
So genetically modified organisms are products of what we call modern biotechnology.
Yes.
And don't confuse biotechnology and modern biotechnology. Biotechnology is broad.
Okay.
The people who do brewing of local brews, they use biotechnology. The development of insulin that's used to help is given to people who are suffering from diabetes is through biotechnology. The process of baking yeasts, using yeast to bake bread, is biotechnology. The controversial bit is what they call modern biotechnology, which is a process that does not take place naturally, because if it is brewing of busa, that is a natural process. You just have to put the active ingredient. If it's baking, it's a natural process.
Yeah.
But now when you come to modern biotechnology, these are products of the laboratory.
Yes.
It's not your normal sexual relation that brings a product, or normal crossing of like if it's bees, crossing of genes normal, or if it's bees that move from one maize crop to another to pollinate, that doesn't happen. It's something that's happening a lot in the laboratory, and that brings a lot of controversy because the process is not precise. It has caused some challenges with especially some people say some of the cases where children are born with a little bit of abnormalities may be caused by these genetically modified genes.
Yeah.
For example, if you look at autism, some scientists have suggested that. If you look at, for example, cerebral palsy, when you look at a child who has cerebral palsy, it's only one gene that goes wrong, only one, and you can imagine the child gets cerebral palsy. And so we are asking, the normal process of tissue culture, for example, to develop a tissue culture banana is very normal and it is right. But this process where you're taking and crossing species barrier, because when you go to the laboratory, you can inject the gene from the tomato or from a fish that lives in the deep seas, in cold seas, to a tomato, so that the tomato can survive in a cold environment. But now we are going, that's food for us, and when you eat the food, it may not kill you today, but 20 years later you see the effects. It doesn't kill you quick, but 20 years later you see the effect. So a lot of the countries, for example, Zambia, in the time of their late president, Levi Mwanawasa, in 2002, the country was facing hunger. And the president was under pressure to accept GMOs. Until the Western countries were saying, this president is refusing for us to bring in GMOs, and the people are going to die. And he was very adamant that they are not going to accept GMOs. But when the pressure became too much, they reached an agreement, bring in the GMOs milled. Because when you bring it milled, you as a farmer will not save for the next president. Because when you bring it as grain, many of the farmers will will I eat everything? Where will I get money to buy seed next season? So they eat a bit and leave some and plant, and you cause contamination of the genes.
Okay. So that one, I think it's at least now people have an idea of what GMO is. It might be a foreign word to some people, but I think you've put it very clear. And there's some arguments that people have for GMOs. They say that this is technology. People have been doing it. When we cross hybrid seeds have been are GMOs because you're taking genes from one plant and transferring to another.
No, hybrids are not GMOs.
Yes, so that's the point that I want you to differentiate and try to, help people understand what is the difference.
When you're talking about hybrids, hybrids is pure crossbreeding.
Yes.
What happens, for example, if you want, you're in the Central Highlands, you want maize that's not too tall,
yes,
or too short. You want some small, maybe a medium size.
Yeah.
You cross pure breeds, and then when you grow them, they give you the pure breed that is at the middle level.
Yes.
And that happens naturally. It's maize.
Yes.
GMO is maize, pig, maize, tomato, maize. It's not the same species. You're crossing the species barrier. And that's why I'm telling you, hybrids are not GMOs. They're just pure crossing of same breed to get a desired trait.
Yes.
And that's very okay, and we have no issue with that. Even in tissue culture, it's just getting the right species and crossing the same banana. But when it becomes banana donkey, that's GMO.
Yes.
You're crossing the species barrier.
All right.
Yeah.
Something doesn't sound right when you say, crossing it from banana to donkey. It's something fishy about it. But now in Kenya, we've had a ban of GMOs. Was it since 2012? 2012, yeah. And then last year we saw the president sort of giving not a green light, but a hint that we may start growing GMO. So what has changed in the process since 2012 up until now? Is there legislation that has gone through that now the government feels it's ready to venture into GMO farming? According to your own understanding, what has changed in between?
When the government banned, the cabinet made that ban on GMOs in 2012. They went forward and appointed a task force led by Professor Kihumbu Thairo to look at whether Kenyans are ready to accept GMOs or just do a research. And remember, as the Kenya Biodiversity Coalition, we contributed to it. After 2012, again in 2013, Kihumbu Thairo they continued with that work. They were commissioned. Unfortunately, over 5 years down the line, the Thairo report has never been released. We have used our lawyers to follow up on that issue. The National Biodiversity Authority, which is a competent agency that deals with issues related to genetic modification, and even the Ministry of Health, who commissioned that research, their stand is that the report has to be approved by Parliament, taken to Parliament, read, approved, then it can be taken to the Cabinet. So we have been asking a lot of questions why that has not happened. Our belief is that the Thairo report recommends Kenyans are not ready for GMOs, because why the stalling? Why the desire not to release this report? And also with the ban, there's been a lot of pressure. A few years back, there were people who were saying we're going to lift this ban in a few months and all this. And then there's the big push for BT cotton.
Yes.
When you speak with people out there, they tell you we have moved away from maize, because maize, you have made it very controversial. We're going to BT cotton because BT cotton is just fabric. That's fabric. But the truth is, BT cotton is only 40% fabric. 60% is cottonseed oil, which you'll use for cooking.
Wow.
Cottonseed oil. It's cottonseed cake that goes into animal feed. It's cotton straw that also goes into animal feed. 60%. Only 40% ends up as fabric. And if you look at countries like India, where BT cotton has been grown, there have been even cases of allergies because of the use of BT cotton. Burkina Faso started growing BT cotton, and in 2 years they banned it, 2016. Reason being, the variety that they were introduced to, which is the one that is also being pushed in Kenya, was a shorter strand. So Burkina Faso went to be a huge exporter, one of the leading exporter of cotton to Europe and America, and it came to bottom of the group because the strands were shorter. Who wants a short strand? They prefer long strands so that the spinning is very easy. it reached a decision in 2016. The Burkina Faso government said we don't want BT cotton. They banned it.
Yeah.
They went back to their conventional varieties. If you look, for example, in Kenya, the reason why the cotton industry went down was not an issue about the variety. It was a conventional variety.
Yeah.
It was not variety. Farmers were not getting paid for their cotton. The cooperative sector went down. The Cotton Development Authority was not fulfilling its mandate to the farmers. They would supply the cotton.
Yeah.
They would not get paid. Eventually, the farmers abandoned this cotton. It's not worth, because you're not getting money for it, you're not getting value for it, and that's how Kenya went down in the cotton sector.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people misadvising our government and our president, saying that BT cotton is the way to go. Yet, BT cotton, the price of BT cotton will be almost 40 times the cost of the conventional varieties.
Wow.
I've written an article on this. It will be almost 40 times. The beneficiary is a multinational pushing it.
Yes.
So it's about control of market, control of resources.
Wow.
Of course, these multinationals repatriates most of its profit outside. Who is the beneficiary? Will the farmer be able to afford that seed?
Not really. I don't.
Is it really going to contribute to the Big Four agenda? I don't think so.
Yeah.
In the textile industry, it is not.
Yeah.
We are better off to start off with the conventional variety. Look at it, because it was not the reason why the textile industry failed in Kenya.
Yeah.
And so that is our biggest challenge with this push. And I believe our president has a lot of goodwill with us.
Yes.
But there are people who are pushing this agenda, because for them, it is about making money and profit for multinationals.
Yeah. For me, you've mentioned two very important points. That the failure of cotton farming in the early 80s, 90s wasn't really due to production. It was due to mismanagement.
Yeah, exactly.
So the issue of production isn't really the issue. And number two, the high cost of purchasing the seed. So, I've read reports where the multinationals, say we will be giving seeds to the GMO seeds to farmers for free. But how sustainable is that? I'm just picturing a point where they might get and say,
It's a way to get you hooked to it.
yes.
If you look at a country like Malawi, Malawi introduced what they call the fertilizer support program,
Yeah.
similar to something we had in Kenya. The first 1 or 2 years, the company was supplying free to the government,
Yes.
and of course it was reaching the farmers. They got hooked into it. After 2 years, you buy. Malawi, which is a very small country, currently spends about $200 million on the fertilizer support program, because once you
That is
start using it,
taxpayers' money.
yes, because they have to support the farmers. Because once you started on it, it's like a drug.
Yes.
You start off bit by bit, but the next time you're selling your kanzu, because you want to get the supply, you are hooked to it. So the farmers are hooked to it. The soils are becoming graded. Each season you have to use more fertilizer. It's unlike the organic or the agroecology way. The agroecology way builds the soil. So as you continue, production goes up. But with fertilizer and chemical inputs, it's going down. Every time you have to add more to get production, So it was a good investment for them. They gave you for free for 2 years.
Yes.
They've hooked you for the next 30 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can see there must be a trick somewhere. There's nothing for free nowadays, and for us who are lucky enough to get the free milk from the 10th president way, I think it ended over there. So it's important that we are saying they. Who are they? We say the people who are pushing this agenda.
It's mostly
But who are these people?
multinationals.
Yes.
That are very big in the seed industry. They are big in the fertilizer industry. They are big even in the input and the chemicals, pesticides, herbicide industry. Yes, and I'm sure you know most of them. These are multinationals.
Yeah. So on that point, we've seen the GMO debate. It's very high in the West, especially in the US. They've been growing for quite a while, and most of the criticism or people label against the GMO supporters is that they have a lot of money. So for example, if you see the Monsantos, which are being labeled as the giants behind GMOs. They have a lot of budgets, and recently they got merged with Bayer. So you're seeing we've seen their effects that they have in the West, especially in the US, and there is accusation of them. It's a revolving door between the FDA, the national regulation body, and the Monsantos. Now they are able to have a grasp of that sector, so they control it in terms of the seeds. If there's a major thing or proposition that needs to be passed, they are easy to influence and have their effect on. So we are seeing the same people coming into the country. So for example, you're seeing them setting up camps here in Kenya. Are you seeing, or are you worried that they might have the same effect in the country in terms of pushing forward to the growing of GMOs?
Yes, I agree with you. These companies, once they get a grip, at the end of the day, the population has to have food. Big revolutions have come up because of food.
Yes.
If you can't give us bread and you can't give us cake, you remember the French the French revolution was about the issue of the bread or cake.
Yes.
And the people said, we want bread. She was like, give them cake. If they can control the food industry, they control the economy. Because the government, for example, like 2 years ago, 2 years ago when there was a food, last year I think, there was not much food. The government gave money and removed even the taxes on maize.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you cannot rule over people who are hungry.
True.
Yeah. So there's that revolving door, and you're very right.
Yeah.
And then the consolidation of power among the companies, the buyout of Monsanto by Bayer, and they changed their name to Bayer.
Yeah.
Because the name Monsanto was becoming too wrong for everyone.
Yes.
Too wrong for everyone. So you find it's now a big conglomerate.
Yeah.
It can their budget is several times the budget of Kenya in a year. In the US already they are controlling the agriculture industry, like you say, the revolving door. So if you open the door for them here in Kenya, we are still a developing country.
Yeah.
It can be very dangerous for us. If you look, for example, at issues related to seed, already we have our seed laws that are UPOV 1991 compliant. These laws are very punitive on smallholder farmers. They do not recognize smallholder farmers as breeders. They have a provision for what they call seed inspectors. So the seed inspector can come to your farm because you grew your local maize, but your neighbor grew maize that is maybe a hybrid, and they cross, and we come and test your maize and we see our gene in your maize. You will pay for it.
Wow.
It does not allow exchange of seed. It doesn't allow smallholder farmers. It does not recognize their contribution to breeding. And as if you see, smallholder farmers are treated as people who don't know anything, and they have been breeding and feeding us for many years, since time immemorial. And so it's important that even in our seed laws we look at these issues and stand firm. Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania have some special provision which they call quality declared seed, QDS. This quality declared seed can be exchanged among several, in an area like 7 villages can exchange seeds. But in Kenya it's very punitive. It is just that in some places it has not been implemented fully. But if it is implemented fully, it is going to open a door for the multinationals, and local seed will lose them. Already we are talking about biodiversity loss. When companies control these seeds, will be reduced to just a few seeds that you can use, and you pay for them dearly to do production. And that is a very dangerous path for our country. If you look at the case of Dwayne Johnson and Roundup, the active ingredient is called glyphosate. Glyphosate has been declared by the World Health Organization as a possible carcinogen. It is widely used in Kenya as Roundup, or because the patent on glyphosate is not there, you'll find it in other names like Weedol, local names, local names that are used.
The active ingredients in this.
Yes, and you can see the rising cases of cancer in the country because you as a farmer upstream, you're using Roundup, you're using Weedle.
Yeah.
It flows down when it rains. It comes to the water bodies. We all drink from that river. So even if you're trying to protect yourself, unless the government is very strict, some of these chemicals that are used in Kenya have been banned in Europe.
Yeah.
In Europe, they were used in the days of the World War to make bombs. They have nowhere to take these chemicals. So dump them in Africa.
Yeah.
They're the ones being used to as a dumping ground, and you're buying for it.
Yeah.
And you go and you spray your tomatoes. You go to the market, the tomatoes are even smelling of the chemicals.
Yeah.
The chemicals are even banned in Europe because they were being used in the days of the World War to make bombs, and they have nowhere to take these chemicals.
Yeah.
And so we are using them, and it's affecting our health. Look at the cancer cases. Every family has been affected.
Yes.
They have a person who has cancer. The cost of treatment is so high. It's depleting resources. People are selling their properties because of these chemicals. And for us as the Kenya Biodiversity Coalition, we stand and say we are promoting agroecology. Let us go back. It will take time, but let us practice agriculture that feeds us and reinvigorates the soils for the future generation.
Yeah. Okay, so it's very important also you've mentioned about the pesticides and the effect that it has. One of the things that are labeled towards GMO is that they'll be able to reduce the amount of chemicals that will be used in their growing. But we've seen that's not the case, right? So, for example, South Africa, there was a report that came out since 2012. There is an increase in terms of the amount of chemicals they've been using from 10 million gallons of pesticides to over 20. So clearly there is a disconnect there. So that's another worry in terms of the effect that we know that are already happening when someone is exposed to these chemicals for a long time. As a country, what are some of the things that you see we can learn from the Africans who are, because there are some African countries which are already doing GMOs, South Africa, Burkina Faso, Egypt. So what are some of the lessons that you see we can draw from those countries?
I think the evidence, especially related to BT cotton and BT maize. For example, in Kenya, the maize variety that is being pushed to be introduced is a variety called Mon 810. It's what they're testing in Kiboko, and which has been put under what they used to call the water efficient maize for Africa.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Mon 810 failed in South Africa. They had to do a stacked variety. I know for a fact that there's been an application in South Africa for a triple stacked variety. Double didn't work.
So before we continue, stacked, what does that mean?
Two GM varieties mixed together. So Mon 810 and I think Mon 8, I would have to confirm.
Yeah.
A stack would be Mon 810 and Mon 8. Maybe I think it's
so
89 different GMOs.
Different genes that are inserted into
2 are double.
Yes.
Yeah. 3 are triple stack. So the Mon 810 failed. It's a single trait.
Yeah.
Then double failed. The Monsanto had applied for a triple stacked, and I think the regulatory agency was tired and they refused. They said, "We are not going to approve this."
Yeah.
Mon 810 was banned in France and several European countries. And is a variety that we are being pushed for here. It's even a variety that is old age. The patent on it has been lifted. It's over 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's actually tumedampiwa. We're being told we're being helped, but it's dumped on you.
Okay.
It's been dumped on us.
You think it's new?
Yeah, and we think it's new. It's nothing new. It's something that has been dumped on us. The challenges of super weeds and super pests has been evident with BT cotton, even BT maize, because they say it will reduce pesticide use or the number of times that you spray, but in reality in South Africa you increase. The population, for example, in South Africa has realized the importance of going organic. So the growing movement of agroecology has really grown because people are tired of these chemicals. We want to protect our health.
Yeah.
Even in Kenya, the movement towards organic and practicing agroecology, the practice has really moved forward because of these challenges that you see.
Yeah.
Furthermore, if you look, for example, in the US, the case of Dwayne Johnson, this guy who sued Monsanto because of Roundup.
Yeah.
and was awarded 200 million USD. That is becoming quite evident if you look at, for example, Argentina, those plantations. You know the challenge with when you're growing the GM, you have to do it as a monocrop. You cannot start mixing it with things. And if you look at Argentina, where they do huge maize plantations, they spray even with small aeroplanes. The effect on the population, people dying of cancer, disease that cannot be understood, children dying, is a big challenge.
Yes.
If you look, for example, at a chemical called 2,4-D, it's used especially in wheat production. Even here in Narok, 2,4-D is a product of Agent Orange, which was used in Vietnam during the war.
And we actually saw its effect on people.
Children being born without limbs.
Yeah.
It's a big problem. Roundup now is being used as to dry. It's so sad that you find a wheat farm, because the farmer wants everything to dry uniformly.
Yeah.
You spray Roundup and it dries uniformly. We are all at risk. We are eating chemicals.
Wow.
And so it's important that as a Kenyan, as a consumer, we stand up for our rights and demand that this country does not accept GMOs. It bans these toxic chemicals and we go back organic.
Yes.
Promotion by the government of organic and diversification of our food products.
Yeah.
It's not just about maize. We can eat so many other products. But now, even the government in its policies just talks about maize, which is a sad situation.
So, yes, it's very important you've been able to highlight, some of the developments and the things that are happening, especially in the development of GMOs in Kenya and in Africa at large. So what is your advice? What's the way forward that as Kenyans we can be able to take?
I think our call to action to move towards promotion of agroecology.
Yes.
In July this year, we're going to have a big conference on agroecology, the East Africa Agroecology Conference. Already in Kiambu County Government, they have declared that they are going to practice agroecology. We are working with the Ministry of Agriculture there. The steps may be small, but we are promoting agroecology, which is all-encompassing, where we want the Kenyan population to have what we call food sovereignty, not food security. Food security could mean you're eating maize every day. Food sovereignty, you have a right to choice related to your cultural aspects, your needs and everything. You have your tastes. You have a right to that, and you can only achieve that with agroecology. Let us go back to the foundation. You as for example a young man, if you have a small plot of land behind your house, are you growing vegetables for your children? Why should you buy every day? How are you promoting urban? Because at the end of the day, the most affected people, especially the urban poor, who have to buy food that is sometimes not very good because of the high residue levels in it. When it's rejected at JKIA, the French beans are rejected at JKIA, they end up in the local market because Europe is very strict in terms of the things. So everything that's rejected there is returned here, which is very wrong because we are killing ourselves slowly. And for us, we want to call on the practice of agroecology in Kenya for biodiversity conservation. Number two, we urge the government to keep the ban on GMOs on and take it a step further. Declare Kenya a country that's going to promote organic farming and agroecology. GMOs will not take us anywhere. Even for growing, if you want to revive the cotton industry, we are better off moving with the conventional varieties, because once we go the GMO way, we are going to affect our farmer livelihoods, our socioeconomics, and even our health, because these foods are not fit for human consumption. They are not proved that they will not cause damage to our systems. And urging the government, these chemicals that are brought into Kenya, some which are banned even in Europe, can we have them banned in Kenya? We don't need those chemicals. We are being used as a dumping ground for chemicals that are in stores and people have nowhere to take them. So we as the Kenya Biodiversity Coalition remain steadfast in our call for the government of Kenya to release the thorough report so that we all know what Professor Kihumu Thairo and his team, the decisions they made or the recommendations they made.
Yeah.
And we believe that Kenya will remain GMO free.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. So thank you very much for having us, and thank you very much for your time. Any programs you may want people to hear about what Kenya Biodiversity is doing?
We have a lot of things we're doing even at the county level, but to remind you that in July, the East Africa Agroecology Conference will be taking place at the Safari Park Hotel. We'll be talking agroecology, reduce pesticide use, reduce the chemical use, and we call on everyone to plan to attend. It's if you visit the BioVision website and the Pelham Kenya website, you'll find all the information.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for
Asante
having us, and it's a pleasure. And it's a conversation that clearly a lot of people are going to get a lot of insights to information that they wouldn't obviously get on the service level. Thank you for your time and for delving deep.
Thank you, and karibu tena many more times. We talk and speak more on these issues.
Asante.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a conversation that was. I mean, we were very able to discuss and get to understand what exactly biodiversity is and where we are in the country, about biodiversity, what's happening, what's government doing, what us as individuals and different organizations are really doing in the biodiversity sector. So we discovered really there's a lot of developments that are going on from the government and from private sector really to try and conserve our biodiversity. And of course, consistent with the challenges we have in climate change, really a lot of plastics nowadays being found everywhere. So there's a danger to our biodiversity, especially when we look at the oceans. Our biodiversity in the ocean is really reducing due to the plastics that are really, really being found in these places. So it's very, very important that when we talk about biodiversity, to understand it's a broad perspective, not only from the plants perspective, but also from the animals perspective. So it's a wide variety of biodiversity, really, and which is really, really at the core of what we are as humans. For example, if you look at even us as Kenyans, right, we are 42 different tribes. It's biodiversity. Can you imagine that? So we are rich in biodiversity. So biodiversity is really the core of who we are as human beings. And of course, we touched a little bit about GMOs. We tried to really explain what GMOs is and what are some of the effects. What can we learn really from some of the countries who've really grown this kind of produce, and what should we really expect from it? So it was an eye-opening, certainly for me. Learned a few things here and there, of course, and as always, as we say at Organic Adventures, you have to get ready to experience that organic magic. So of course, remember, this conversation continues on our social media. Let us know what you think of this conversation and what are some of the things that you don't agree with or you actually agree with. So let us know in the comments, and also on our social media platforms, really on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, we're there. Visit our website, organicadventures.org. We've got a lot of news and there are a lot of information that you can be able to learn from it. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, remember to share this particular podcast and you can give us ratings, really, wherever you're listening from, whether it's SoundCloud, whether it is Apple Podcasts, wherever you are listening from. So make sure you give us a bit of your feedback. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado,